Well, the whole Grand Canyon thing is bananas. Like, there's areas of the Grand Canyon you cannot explore.
You cannot go. You cannot fly over.
Right.
And you can't fly under the rim. Yet when you go to those bad places, suddenly a white plane flies over under the rim, black helicopters show up. I showed on my episode. I show the black helicopters showing up. Like, they do show.
Yeah. Like, they are protecting something.
Something.
It's not as simple as this is a dangerous area, because you can go to any dangerous area.
You go just to the normal tourist area. It's like, be careful. People fall. 2 people a year fall.
Yeah, someone fell recently.
They did?
Yeah, an influencer. Of course, taking a selfie. But the Grand Canyon, there's been these crazy stories of people finding these like Egyptian, these caverns with like Egyptian artwork and hieroglyphics and these stories of artifacts that have been removed from there.
So the story is, it shows up, I believe, in like the Phoenix Gazette. It's 1903 or so. And the explorer is G.E. Kincaid, and he's going down, he's looking for gold deposits or whatever. This is just before Teddy Roosevelt made the Grand Canyon a preserve. He was a naturalist. So he finds these steps that are clearly man-made. He follows the steps up, and there's a cave, and he goes in there, and he describes hieroglyphics that look Egyptian but are not quite. He finds a statue that he describes as like Buddha-like, not Egyptian, not human, but sort of like Buddha, and all these weapons, shields, gold, all sorts of stuff. He keeps going. He finds a deserted city in the caves, and all these tunnels and caverns go everywhere, and he's trying to map everything. He comes out, and he goes back to town, and he gathers together a group that we're going to go find this stuff again. And people are excited about it. And a couple of weeks go by, and everyone's gathered to go on the expedition. He never shows. The expedition goes nowhere, and that's really the last we've heard of it.
Really? And is there any photographs or anything? No.
There never is of this stuff.
Right. Just descriptions?
Just a great story.
Well, the great part of the story is the fact that you actually can't go there. And the idea that there's an area where the military is protecting people from being foolish, that doesn't make any sense.
Nobody asks why.
Right.
Like, nobody asks why. It really bothers me about that story and all of these, whether it's disclosure or whatever. I don't hear anyone asking why. Well, they won't let us. Well, who's they? Right. Someone's in charge of stuff that's not the president.
Right.
Or Congress. So who is it? So, you know,
is it possible there's some sort of a government installation down there somewhere?
It's all going to be woo-woo conspiracy stuff, or it's real, or G.E. Kincaid found something and someone got to him.
But if G.E. Kincaid found something, why would they want to hide some ancient civilization discovery, particularly in the early 1900s? Like, why? For what reason?
I don't know why Graham Hancock is marginalized now.
Right, but wouldn't you think that there's like less of a grip on that stuff in the 1900s, the early 1900s?
I would think so.
Yeah.
So my guess would be treasure and money. That would be my guess. Is it shows up in the paper, the government goes down there, like, there's a lot of stuff down here. Let's grab it, send it to the Smithsonian, who keeps 99% of the stuff under wraps. They have, a billion items that nobody can see, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah, but what the fuck? Which I would love to know the official reason. See if you can Google. Is there an official reason why you're not allowed to go to certain areas of the Grand Canyon?
They use a VPN there, brother.
The story, I was looking at an article about the original article, and it says that the two guys mentioned might not have even existed.
Right.
There's no evidence of them.
G.E. Kincaid?
And another guy named S.A. Jordan.
Oh, so it might be just a story that someone printed? Some horseshit?
Yeah, when I was looking into one of these things before, I found something explaining that back in the early 1900s, when newspapers were a really popular thing to read, I don't know if it was like a game or if there was actual prizes people would play or like amongst themselves to try to get fake stories printed. If you could get the craziest story printed, you win like $500 or...
I might be wrong, but I think Jordan was connected to the Smithsonian, at least according to the story.
I pulled this from the Smithsonian debunk, which, I mean, obviously they would if this is the way we're going to go with it, but them debunking this, and they gave two links, one to the original 1909 article and one to a 2008 update, and that's where I was pulling that from.
I don't trust the Smithsonian. They're exempt from all kinds of stuff.
Yeah?
Well, like there's a law passed not too long ago that if you have Native American artifacts that are important to that culture, especially burial artifacts, they must be returned. Unless you're the Smithsonian, then
they're allowed to hold on to them?
Then you can make a case that you don't have to give it back.
How do they have so much power?
It's a government agency.
Smithsonian is a government. Oh, I didn't even know. I thought it was a private agency. So there's no official story as to why this area of the Grand Canyon is off limits.
For your safety.
The forbidden zone, they call it.
Yeah, that's all I can find.
That's fucking weird. That's fucking weird. That this story comes from the very area that's forbidden. That's fucking weird.
I think.
What are the odds?
I don't believe in coincidences, so. A lot of these stories come from places you just can't go.
Has anybody tried to hike in?
All the time.
Wear
Or
camo?
raft in.
Yeah, did they get busted?
And busted, yeah, and arrested.
Really?
Mm-hmm. You could find
man.
could find online. I wish I knew the names of a team that went up there. That's who found the black helicopters, and I used them in the video, and I credit them. So you can find their videos. They're up there for an hour and a half, trying to find stuff. And what they found up in that forbidden zone is anchored into the ground a giant hook,
right,
or like a loop.
Yeah.
Like what would you use that for? And that would be to rappel down. That's the only reason that would be there. There's no explanation for what is this. They also found artifacts from that era, from the early 1900s, artifacts that people were there. So it's possible that they rappelled that, like they might have been standing right above that entrance. And there are reverse angles of that rock face that look a little weird. It could be pareidolia, but
What's pareidolia?
Pareidolia is the mind's ability to see objects in random noise. It's something we evolved to see predators in the forest. That's why if you see a cloud that looks like an Abraham Lincoln,
right,
it's not Abraham Lincoln. It's pareidolia. But debunkers will always fall on pareidolia. So like the real believers, they hate that word.
God, that would be. Imagine everything would have to be rewritten. If they found some evidence of a lost civilization with no connection to any known civilization that was advanced, that was living in the Grand Canyon.
Did you ever think about going?
To the Grand Canyon?
To go and just be an outlaw and go see.
How would you get in, though? I mean, if they have black helicopters and they're scanning the sky or scanning the ground with some sort of a drone or a plane.
We go in. We live.
Are you planning something?
No. Hold on.
What should we do?
I don't have a contract. All right. So this is already dangerous me sitting here. But I got your back.
If I go.
Yeah.
How many of these crashed crafts do you estimate there are that human beings have recovered?
More than 10.
More than 10.
More than 10.
How many of them are in possession of people in the United States?
I meant more than 10 in possession of the United States.
What about worldwide?
Worldwide?
Do we have any data on that?
We have data, but it's classified. There's no way to really talk about it.
But so there's more, though. You could safely say it's not just the ones in the United States.
Not just the ones in the United States, and these.
Are they equally distributed?
I don't know for sure in terms of data. I mean, we have our best data, of course, on our own retrievals.
But more than 10 retrieved in the United States.
More than 10 retrieved.
What is your take on Bob Lazar?
Well, we looked into the Bob Lazar story, and but only from a certain relatively superficial level. Looked at we found out what his clearance levels supposedly were, and so on, which came back saying it was not high enough to be doing what he says he was doing. On the other hand, it may just simply be, it was better than that, but we didn't have the access to see that. So when I hear his physics descriptions, it's a puzzle. It seems not exactly as I would anticipate might be the technology behind the craft, but I can't absolutely write him off. So it's an enigma, and I don't have any hard data to prove one way or the other. So it's I know you've talked to him. And,
Yeah. It's a fascinating puzzle.
It is a fascinating puzzle.
Because that would be the place, S4 would be the place where they would do that kind of work. I mean, if you wanted to do something like that in complete privacy and secrecy, you do it in the middle of the Nevada desert, very protected.
That's true. Right.
Outside of Area 51.
So even when people that have high clearances go and say, well, tell me about this. What's behind this? Who knows? If it's a special access program, an SAP, it might be, say, no, we're going to tell you that, he didn't do anything of significance here. In fact, he might have done something of significance. There's just no way of telling from the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the actual generator, the thing that powers the craft that Lazar talked about, what was your take on that? This idea that it was element 115, that when it encounters high radiation, it has some sort of an anti-gravitational effect, some warp effect.
Well, there are two aspects. One is, what is the material or mechanisms that generate the effects? And then the other is, are the effects being described reasonable descriptions of the kind of effects you think are associated with such craft? On the element 115, as you know, in the general scientific community, we've seen element 115, but it's very short-lived. So it's hard to evaluate that, and at this point, there's no evidence that's it. But his description of the anti-gravity effects and so on, that's an area that is well described as what you might expect. As it turns out, in that series of 38 papers, one of my own papers that I provided was one called Space-Time Metric Engineering. And when the pilots came to me and said, drops down, takes off, right angle turn at Mach 10, this is way beyond our physics. And I said earlier, no, I think it's not beyond our physics, beyond our engineering. But what I did on the physics level was all of our electronics that we have here, for example, this microphone, the recording that you're making, and so on, that's all based on electromagnetic kinds of technologies, all of which come out of Maxwell's equations. Maxwell's equations, Clerk Maxwell way back in the 1800s, developed the equations for electromagnetism, and basically any kind of electromagnetic device, you name it, Wi-Fi, whatever, can be traced back to his equations. So what I said to myself was, okay, we have these apparent craft operating with this unbelievable kinds of activity. Is there any way to account for that in our physics? Well, it turns out. So what I did, I took a sheet of paper, and the left-hand side of the paper, I wrote down all the weird effects that have been claimed. Right angle turn at Mach 10. I got close to the craft, and suddenly it wasn't the same size as it seemed to be when I was further away. It was a certain color, but when I got close to it, it was a different color. All these weird things. To me, the weirder the better, because if somebody was just making up a BS story, they want it to sound rational. So you don't come up with things like, well, I got in the craft, 5 minutes went by, I came out, and 2 hours had gone by. I mean, you're just not going to make that up. Then on the right-hand side of the piece of paper, I said, okay, we have Einstein's equations in general relativity, and we use them to talk about black hole mergers or neutron star mergers or whatever. And all these things are massively energetic events. Suppose I could engineer Einstein's equations the way we engineer Maxwell's equations for electromagnetic effects. What would I expect to see? And I find out I got a hand-in-glove match between what was claiming to be observed and, what Einstein's equation, if you could engineer them. Well, why can't we engineer them? Well, what we know today is the energy density required to engineer those equations is just way beyond our ability to do so. So,
can you give me a comparison to what the energy requirements or something like that would be like?
Yeah, people have in fact, Alcubierre warp drive. I don't know if you've heard of that, but Miguel Alcubierre was a researcher in general relativity and kind of a Star Trek fan and so on. And he said, I wonder if we could really have warp drive. And so he used Einstein's equations to say, okay, under what conditions could we do a warp drive? And he actually came up with solutions from out of the equations. Okay, what would it take to drive that? Oh, it would be hundreds of times more than the energy of the sun. I mean, just out-of-sight energy. So, until we have a new energy source or until there's some back door that we haven't, zeroed in on, it's just really outside of our expertise